Sorry, I'm just setting up the YouTube live. Just
Okay.
2 minutes as it goes. Here you go. All right, good to go. Happy New Year, everybody. And I suggest we make this session interactive so that I think there's a lot of learning we can get from each other. My name is Hasmukh Chudasama, and I'm the ambassador for the Agile Festival in Kenya. The festival is supposed to kick off in February 2021. It's a month-long festival, but we are doing some events as it leads up to the main event. And we have a gentleman called Ezekiel Odero from Kenya, who is an official speaker for the festival. And I will leave him to introduce. I mean, he's got, I think, a wealth of experience in the agile world. Good, welcome everybody. And I think whoever needs to or wants to make a contribution or comment or ask a question, please raise your hand so I will unmute you. But I think let's try and make this session a bit interactive. Good, Ezekiel? You can take it from there.
Well, thank you. It's good in the new year and start off with the series of the events leading to the Agile Reflect next month. Yeah, so I've been in Agile practice for quite some time, at least dating back to at least 2013 when I started working more properly on Agile initiatives. I've worked in banking and insurance and also within the East Africa and West Africa, where we worked on delivering a number of digital transformation initiatives, as well as other initiatives that touch on the mergers. So I think it will be interesting to share and learn from the others as well on how well we can use Agile to achieve digital transformation initiatives. And it will be nice to really listen to and get experiences from diverse backgrounds of as many of us as who have joined the today's session.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, when I was thinking of a relevant topic that would generate a lot of I think interest, is my field is digital transformation in the technology space. And we always talk about, if you ask 10 people, what is your definition of digital transformation, you're likely to get 10 different answers. That's just the kind of terminology that, it is. What, according to you, is digital transformation?
Yes, actually, as you put it rightly, almost everyone will have a definition based on where they come from, the experiences they have, and how much of information they will have. As it were, I mean, there is no universally accepted standard of digital transformation, and organizations tend to, consider so many things within their space as digital transformations. In the simplest form of it, I mean, digital transformation will basically be using digital technology to, transform the business, to change the way the business model operates, and create value to the customers. I mean, at the very basic form. But then now discussions come as to what extent of value will you create for such a change to be considered a digital transformation. The bigger picture of it largely will revolve around organizations looking at their business strategy and developing business models that they would want to, achieve towards their transformations, and putting together the operating model that will govern and help deliver those solutions in the strategy that they have. And then Agile comes very much in the execution of that to ensure that we have value delivered in a timely manner and incrementally. And then we have the technology that then helps to put that together, be it from a platform perspective, from an end user perspective. So all that fits together to get the value delivered to the customer in a timely manner. So all that would entail digital transformation. It's interesting sometimes when people look at digital transformation in the big picture, where thoughts come to investments that will run into multi-million shillings or dollars. You find organizations doing digital initiatives that could be possibly to the tune of just implementing a USSD, and they say, oh, we have implemented a digital transformation solution. Others will possibly even just do a WhatsApp, for business chatbots and say, we have done digital transformation. Now you can find us and chat with us online. To others, it will be more even just having a social media digital strategy that they put to practice and say, we have implemented a digital strategy. So it's basically a lot to do with the strategy the organization has and how they want to pursue it that really confines the digital transformation within the company, the organization itself.
Yeah, true. They say that investing in technology is not the same as digital transformation. And I think that is, I see a lot in our space where people buy technology or vendors sell technology. But that does not mean that you're transforming. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes.
Point there. Yeah.
So, technology is just the one part of it. So the most important bit is about what value do you create and deliver with that technology, because the technology should help deliver certain value, and that's what helps in the transformation. And again, the people aspect and the management becomes even more critical, because you require a certain level of digitally minded leaders to drive digital initiative with clear ownership coming from probably most decision makers of that organization taking charge of the digital transformation ownership and driving it from a people side, and even the change management aspect of it. So technology makes it happen, but it's a broader agenda than just the technology itself. Yeah.
Agreed. How would you describe business agility?
So business agility, would help organizations to adapt and be able to survive in disruptive times. Organizations ideally need to have put in place ways of practice that can help them survive difficult times that have not been foreseen, like in the case of COVID that we have today, for example. Not ideally in organization, or rather nobody expected that COVID, for example, would come and disrupt businesses the way it did. And the sooner it came, for example, in Kenya, when it was announced around March 13th, you find that, a lot of interventions are to be put in place by organizations to respond to the situation and to ensure that there's business continuity around the services and products that they offer locally and across board. And so digital, business agility speaks to how fast businesses will respond and adapt to changes. So this could be as disruptive as a COVID, could be market changes, could be changes that are due to external factors beyond the borders of that organization, or could simply be, adapting to evolving technologies that will make business value be realized very fast and in a more efficient way. So organizations again are different approaches.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so organizations adopt different approaches to that, and part of the business agility leads to, is supported by, agile practices. And within agile, for example, there are of interesting dimensions again, where we have the core Agile itself, and now we have several Agile methodologies and frameworks, and there's the attempt to be Agile and the desire to be Agile because the world is said to be digital, and almost every single organization you find would like to have a pie of the digital space, and they say that Agile is the fuel that drives digital transformation. So implementation of Agile across organizations is one way to help realize business agility. And there are different organizations adopt different approaches to Agile, while some really have maybe the common Scrum for the digital transformation. Others would maybe implement Scrum-Ban, XP, Scale Agile Framework, Modern Agile, and so many more. But then the question that is even more important is, as we adopt these Agile methods, are we just adopting them and following them, or are we customizing them? Are we making them part of our journey so that we develop the Agile mindset that we can then be able to create our own Agile, way of working that is distinct from the existing ones, that works for us, that is tested, and then we keep building on it, So those are some of the very interesting discussions, and you could see organizations at different stages. Some are still struggling. I like the way, for example, there are different ways to even assess which the maturity levels of organizations that are in Agile practice, and you find some are actually being customized by the organizations. Some are based on the specific frameworks, and there are some that also tend to look general enough that still are based on the very core principles and manifesto of the Agile practice. So I think that is foundation of business agility. And the mindset aspect is very critical, because if you just adopt a method and you want to use it, a number of times so many things within it which might have worked so well, maybe where it was started or where else it has worked, may not work within the context of an organization. So the ability to adapt and make it work locally is really the essence of it. And that mindset, the ability to accept that things can really change and not have a fixed mindset around how this happen, will really be useful.
So Ezekiel, you preempted one of my questions. Since you spoke about methodologies and frameworks, true business agility comes from freedom and not frameworks. I think I picked it up from somewhere on the site. What's your view on that? Because I was trying to put my mind around that, where they say business agility comes from freedom and not frameworks, but there are so many frameworks out there. And obviously there are people who are very passionate about one framework or another. What's your comment on that?
So I think ideally, I mean, if you look at dating back to the Agile Manifesto, when it was put together, it didn't specify any framework to be used to achieve it. It was just like, these are the Agile principle, these are the things we value more, and it was not telling how to achieve it. I think I sometimes look at it in the context maybe where you find students going to the university and they are taught, especially for the technical courses, they are taught the principles around those particular courses. And when they go outside the market, you find that the market does not need the principles immediately. The market needs the work done. And you need, in certain cases, you may need the principles to do the work, but in certain cases, rather more often than not, the work is done without those principles seems to be applying. The other way I would put it simply is, I mean, if, for example, if now, for those of us in this session, if we are, for example, told that we have an opportunity to be taken to a destination of our choice in the world, fully paid up for up to 30 days, and we are taken, for example, to the cockpit of a plane, and we are told that everything has been assessed, the plane is ready to get going, and we are left in it, and we are told that we have, the plane should depart in, say, the next, I mean, exactly after 3 hours from now, So the question I would ask is, what will each one of us do? What will we do in that position? If anyone was a pilot, that would be an easy process to think through and know what to do. But if it is just given to us, you're the one choosing the destination, you've been put in the cockpit, and you're told you're the one going to fly the plane. So basically, coming back to, I think the issue of frameworks, for organizations that are starting, frameworks help to give a common understanding of where to pick up from, because the principles as they are may be a little bit difficult to apply in a general space. So the frameworks, in my view, would help organizations to begin to understand how does Agile work. So could it be even Scrum, Kanban, with modern Agile, the heart of Agile, whatever it is, there are so many of them, whether it's less or whichever. So it will help the organization of the people to learn how the team can work together, how they can plan the sprints, for example, how they can do the basics of looking at the Agile principles and doing the basics of Agile. As organizations mature, my expectation is that they should be able to evolve with this framework to something of their own. In fact, if you look at some of the big tech firms, you look at, say, Microsoft, Facebook, and all that, you find that they are technically and practically Agile, but you may not hear much of them talking about we are doing Scrum, we are doing Kanban, except for a few times when I had SAFE was engaging some of them. I mean, but most of the time they have their own version of Agile. And they don't even call it Agile. They just have themes that speak to being Agile, and the people understand it in a way that they're able to execute flawlessly. And that is the essence of it altogether. So in my view, frameworks would be like just in the cockpit. If you're put there and you're just left, you'll be possibly hanging. You're not sure whether you're going right, left, or just in the middle. So, but the frameworks can help that. But the most important thing is how do you evolve from it to come up with your own way of Agile execution. So how I tend to look at it. And because again, there's a lot of interesting discussions around how the aspect of freedom that the frameworks really try to constrain people's thoughts and, you know, independence of mind around how to implement the Agile principles, which sometimes is true. I had a discussion, I think about a month ago, with an executive of one of the strong startups that are almost going to, I mean, are in Series B at the moment. And when we are talking Agile, what thing we happen to talk about SAFE, for example, as an Agile framework, and he was like, SAFE is too complex. You just can't implement it. I mean, so there's that talk. And then it comes, for example, in the case of SAFE, it comes with very detailed, defined processes that you should follow. So the question becomes, how does it then tie to the, you know, the core practices of Agile, where we should, you know, value processes less? So
no, that's, I think that's some very useful inputs that you've given there. So let's bring this home in terms of, let's look at Kenya, where an organization has, you know, realized that they need to adopt Agile. Based on what you've spoken about frameworks and, you know, the genesis of the Agile Manifesto, how do we approach this client, this organization that says, okay, it's time to adopt Agile? What would you say to them?
So I think in my case, for example, what I would want to understand first is at a minimum is the nature of the business that the organization is involved in and their strategic perspective in terms of Agile. It would be good to have an understanding on at a high level how they currently practice their current operating model, and whether it is purely waterfall, that is hybrid, or is some form of Agile. In fact, there is an interesting look at it where we are looking at what we call a simple view of Agile, where we could have like 4 dimensions. So we could have what we call the Agile theater, where, you know, people are trying to implement an Agile framework or methodology, but there's no Agile mindset. So almost everyone, you know, is trying to do Agile. Maybe you find in an organization someone is trying to say, oh, we're Agile, but is implementing a bit of Scrum. Another one saying we're agile, but it's doing more of Kanban. Another one is saying we're agile, but it's doing something about safe. Another one is saying we're agile, it's doing something on like the heart of agile. So you find there's the thought of using agile practice and a framework, but there's no agile mindset that is coordinated across the organization.
Yeah.
And then that would be part of what we could find if we engage the organization deeper to find where they belong. And then there's also what we call the agile undercover, So this is where, for example, the organization really, they have the agile practice happening. There's an agile mindset. People are agile almost by they've come to the point where they value. They have the agile mindset. They're doing things in an agile manner, and but they are low in terms of the consistency on the of agile principles. So they'll have a principle here in use, but they are so much coordinated and they're able to move. Then what will be more of an optimal agile, where we find they have set on maybe a particular framework or other agile principles that are in use effectively, and they have the agile mindset. So things move as if they are following a particular, they are working in rhythm, like they're following a pattern, but the pattern may not even be documented. They have gone through it so much so that they know it and they just do it. So they are agile almost inherently, and they do so well. And then there's the agile anarchy, which is one of the states that you may find and may not be so interesting for such an organization. So in this case, there's simply no agile mindset and there's no agile framework, but people are still talking of we are agile. And so this is where you find, and I happen to have been an organization of that sort when we were starting agile, where predominantly digital transformations and technology solutions were implemented using Prince2, and it was one of the most intense Prince2 practice areas I ever was involved. So there's that part of a lot of documentation, following processes as per Prince2 to a lot of detail. But then there were initiatives and that would not really fit well because maybe some of them were small. So going through that process, because there was a customized Prince2 anyway for it, but still even the customized was too heavy for some of the small, digital initiatives that were being run. So you find it's a bit of a mix. You can't call it hybrid per se, but it's just somewhere in there, So I think if we get to engage in an organization, we can help find out where do they really belong in their current agile journey, and where do they want to be. And based on where they want to be, it's then possible to look at how do we then craft, an understanding and a journey that can transform us to the desired state of the agile practice for that organization.
Yeah.
And,
so, I think that's it's a great way to take a client on their journey. What is your view of, look, in our market, cloud adoption is accelerating. One of the features of cloud is, elasticity. Is there a correlation between cloud adoption and digital transformation / business agility? Do you see any correlation there or potential correlation?
Hasmukh, please let me in on my phone.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't see any. So I'm not seeing anybody here. Mercy. I just see you guys here.
Okay.
Sorry, that was Mercy. She's I think she's trying to log in through the phone. Yeah. So I was asking about
So in my perspective, I think cloud really is a necessity, rather really propels digital transformations. If you look at the speed within which, basically, so if you look at the aspect of business agility, agile and cloud, there's the aspect also of the DevOps that comes in. So if you're looking at agile practices that lead to solutions delivery, then one of the core aspects is automated testing that leads to automated continuous integration and continuous deployment. So if you have a cloud, account, to put it simply, that you have subscribed to, the deployments happen very easily without much input, because even some of the automated deployment solutions are based on the cloud. So that makes it a lot easy. And back to it, in fact, even in terms of infrastructure costs, that really helps. I've seen a number of cases where certain applications, when they get used so much, they exceed the capacity storage meant, and therefore systems stop. I mean, those applications stop. And this is a real scenario that I've seen for certain applications. So the cloud really becomes very useful in terms of enabling that elasticity on demand, without really the user having to intervene a lot about that. And besides that, also, you'll find that a number of the tools that aid agile practice, like the Jira and so on, that are based on subscription models, are also hosted in the cloud. So there's a really correlation among business agility, agile practice, cloud, as well as DevOps. So it makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
If you look at, again, the cost of provisioning, the resourcing that you need to maintain the on-premise infrastructure for the digital solutions, it overweighs the gains that you have over time. The annual maintenance costs, repairs and replacements, and so on. So I think the cloud is really a better alternative to resourcing for infrastructure to host digital solutions in-house. Not even except, because I've even seen highly regulated industries, especially like banking and insurance, which have been for long been highly conservative in terms of moving their data to the cloud, adopting some form of cloud, be it like the likes of the Oracle digital appliance being on site, or even having a hybrid model where you have an appliance from the cloud provider being hosted on-premise and then still accessing outside. So I think it's something that will not be avoidable in the long run. And you will find, for example, that for startups that may not necessarily be involved in digital transformation, because for them, digital transformation is their first step. It's even a lot easier because they don't have to take care of the capital to lay the base of the infrastructure on their side, the servers, the databases, and all that. In any case, they don't even know whether some of this will be utilized and to what extent. And so if they go to the cloud straight away, then it becomes a very convenient journey to scaling. If they needed to stop, the amount they would have paid is way less than the much they would have incurred to set up the infrastructure on premise. So I think cloud is really something to look for. To keep forward to, again, in terms of the digital transformations.
It's a great enabler. I think. So look, Kenya is known as an innovation hub. There's so much, creativity and software development capabilities that we have. The region, I think, you got, success stories, Safaricom's and NCBA Bank. And my question is, if we look at global giants such as Uber, Airbnb, somebody, there you go. Yeah, if you look at global giants, NCBA, which have disrupted markets globally, right? Is it safe to say that these organizations are agile by design, or they have, because they're born in the cloud, the business model that they have adopted is also born with agility? Is it safe to say? What are your thoughts on that? And does that make existing organizations sort of handicapped towards reaching some of these goals?
Yeah, so maybe to start off, I think, and actually I do believe that startups by their very nature, so organizations that are created actually either born on the cloud or just startups nature in the digital space, they come to solve a known problem. And part of the good thing they have is that they don't have the baggage of legacy systems and legacy mindsets. More often than not, you find that the persons at the forefront of these applications are people who have certain experiences in those domains over the years. So they have seen what works, what doesn't work, and a number of them are open to new ways of work. So the thing is, when they start, they don't have like this, do I call it the traditional mindset about how things are done. They don't have processes to follow that will say, do this, do that, and so on.
Yeah.
They are not bound by those bureaucratic processes again. So they are likely to be more agile and nimble in terms of the execution. In fact, to put into perspective, I was once involved with a large-scale agribusiness supply chain company that started on the same note, for example, and they were like over 10 years though. But this time, though, the one challenge that was there predominantly is that they got a good market. They were able to, sell their products effectively and, get some good revenue and margins.
Yeah.
So what will happen is that, but they were still not able to employ people who are highly qualified because they are still a startup and so on. So what will happen is more often than not, they would hire, technical persons, be developers or persons support the infrastructure, UX designers, QAB, and all that when there was need. So once they would come and do the piece of work, then go away, and so on and so forth. So a point came when they had a big solution, they had a big market, and the solution was not stable now, because they kept fixing things as the problems came, and the solution became so big, the platform was not supportive. So they went to a mode where it was, we call it firefighting. So most of the time, it's a customer complaint when it comes. Almost the whole team focuses to fix the issue at the moment. So whatever they're working on that will enhance the solution will be put on the sidelines. So a point came that this was no longer sustainable. So the organization had to take a step to refactor the code. To redo it with a way to allow it to be scaled. And they had to adopt a cloud hosting. They went to Azure, for example, in that case. And they became more oriented to DevOps, implementing the Microsoft Team Foundation server of the times, which included most of the, the components of requirements, documentation, QA, branching, and all that, and automated testing, and test management in a pack. So I would say that most startups have an agile mindset because they want their focus the customer value to be delivered almost tomorrow. Because in any case, if they can't deliver the value so fast, they'll simply be nowhere in the business. And the worst part of it is, you never know. Maybe what you are struggling to work on here, someone is doing it even better. Before you launch, you will hear they have put up a much better solution in the market. So you are simply swept away. And if with a startup, you don't have enough, you have less capital. So if what you've been working on for the last 2 months is delivered by someone else, you possibly have to start from scratch. That is all sunk cost, So I think for that, the startups have have the advantage of being agile and having an agile mindset. And those on the cloud, definitely they have the advantage of the scaling. And in terms of the impact on the big players, I think it could cut across. So there are the cases where, for example, the startups have disrupted the big players. And there are also cases where the big players have collaborated to co-create with the startups. And this has happened quite a bit. A lot more in the financial sector and a bit more I've seen on the health. Where, for example, maybe for argument's sake, and maybe this is Kenya, we can talk about it. Some of the early players in the space of startups were like the Cellulant, for example, and then the Lectix came and so many other players. So you will see, for example, that when they started off, they had like a model where, they would, banks, for example, subscribing to their channels, or their platforms will pay like per transaction and so on and so forth. And so, organizations that they work in, the financial institutions became more concerned, and therefore they went to co-creation where the revenue sharing models will most likely not even be on that, but based on other methods that they would found most convenient. So, and I think that is a much better way to progress when the collaboration takes precedence over, the disruption. As an advantage of the disruption that comes with the startups.
Absolutely.
And
So from what I'm hearing, the key differentiator and the key, I would put it as a competitive advantage is the mindset.
Yes.
Because the mindset is not right, then it's not going to work. That's it. To put it in
sure,
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the mindset, a collaborative mindset helps a great deal, yes.
Yeah. So what do we, Ezekiel, what do we need to do according to you, that some steps that we can take locally so that we can start sort of nurturing this mindset within, you know, our youth, for example, you know, at a very, you know, from a university level, or so that we can say 3 years down or 5 years down, we can see many more success stories coming out of Kenya. What's your view on that? What really needs to happen?
On that, one thing I think that will be useful is if we have industry partnerships with the universities and the colleges to help the learners develop an industry mindset that is solution-oriented. I've seen cases where students, for example, at the university, come up with really useful solutions that would just be, you know, scaled for commercial use. And then they have to come out with a lot of skill, but then when they come out of the learning, they have to start from scratch to be taught how the industry works. So that industry academia linkage, I think, would be one important aspect. There's been this initiative in Kenya where the learners are taken through some, you know, internship through the presidential unit that takes care of them for certain internship on digital. I think that's also useful. More than that, I think also there used to be something that was started, which was good, but I think it died out. What was called the digital villages, where almost each constituency had sort of a digital hub. That was this was part of Vision 2030, when around 2008 to 2009, when this was taking, you know, a base. So this would have really been good places to enable local, you know, persons develop interest in these solutions and build their capacities on, you know, creating digital solutions and learning more about digital, you know, enabling capabilities. So it would be some of the aspects. More than that, I think it's also helpful if the advanced organizations also, you know, create more of the management training opportunities or internship opportunities to help the learners gain first-hand experience on some of these digital, you know, solutions and how well they could fit. And my thinking and belief is that there's nothing more important than learning, you know, from experience than just learning in theory and, you know, seminars and workshops. The aspect of being hands-on to get the practical knowledge, how it applies, is really something that cannot be taken away.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think you made some valid points. I'm going to open this up to the you know, to the audience. If they have any questions or if they want to make any comments, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. You're on mute. I don't know if you're trying to say something.
Hi, Ezekiel.
Hi.
Hi.
My mind, you speak my soul, you speak my blood. And everything that I represent, you've just spoken it, because the truth of the matter is the complexity of our mind as African is our #1 blocker. And the fact that we have a very patriarchal structure for organizational structure, equally a major impediment. So I think that the key things that you have highlighted is the fact that We just need a place to express. We're very big on certification, and certification doesn't get you the job. So I just want to say thank you for very insightful contribution. And Hasmukh, thank you for facilitating this. We need to hear more of unsung heroes that understand the system. You talked about the startup not coming with a lot of legacy systems or baggages, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a startup, so I've seen the success in operating the agile approach, and the seamlessness that I've created around my processes is just unprecedented. So you're just spot on. I just wanted to say bravo.
Thank you, Mercy.
What is well done in a Kenyan language? You're Kenyan, right, Ezekiel?
Yes, but I've also been to your country many times.
Thank you for a brilliant session. Hasmukh, well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
There's a number of items I wanted to talk to you about, I think, but we'll need to do a second session, Ezekiel. I think we'll set it up sometime, because I think it's such a wide area, and I think you're spot on with some of the what you're saying, and the knowledge and the experience that it actually comes through very well. Thanks for that. Anybody else has a comment or a question or anything?
Hasmukh, I think I'm going to say, I'm just going to make a contribution.
Do you want to switch on your video, Shimunya?
Sure.
Yeah, go.
I like what Ezekiel said when it comes to DevOps. I think they're very useful when it comes to remote teams, because when you look at what COVID has done to so many organizations and so many businesses, most businesses are now moving to operating remotely or moving to online operations. So how do you move from a physical business to one that is operating online, and how do you scale, and how do you use technology to enhance your business? So I think DevOps have a very big role to play in being agile or embracing agile. So we need to really look at what what the role DevOps have in agility, and I think that's very important. Thank you.
Chimuya, if I can add, based on the recent data that I gathered, almost 2% I've heard of DevOps.
So it's a message that needs to be carried forth as well, because DevOps have a very important role to play in being agile.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I actually have a DevOps class that one of my partner offered to give to mentor, but I just put it in the burner because I just not gotten that matured people to get into DevOps, because you understand business analysis, understand the agile mindset, to understand Scrum. For you to now go deep dive into DevOps, otherwise it would just totally rock the boat. I mean, Ezekiel, brilliant session again.
Yeah.
Valid point. I just wanted to buttress your point. 2%. I've heard of DevOps. Africans, oh.
Well, shocking. True.
And one other thing I'd like to contribute to is that there are so many, when you look at the big players like Microsoft, they offer free training on how to use DevOps. So people must take advantage of that, and so that they're aware of the tools that can enhance the different organizations into being more agile.
Sorry, Chimunya, I missed your last sentence.
I was saying, like Mercy had mentioned, only 2% from her data know about DevOps. So I was trying to say organizations like Microsoft actually provide free training in DevOps. So people can take advantage of that so that they can enhance their tools and skills and capabilities in order to be more agile. Thank you.
True. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nishmoni. Anybody else?
Let me share a small video here as the next person prepares their voice.
All right.
You may enable.
I think I need to give you permission to share.
Yeah.
On. Although it will, because I'm doing live streaming, Ezekiel, so it will not allow to do that.
Okay.
No,
That's fine then. That's fine. Okay.
Perhaps you can share it with me separately,
Okay.
and then I'll share it on the group. Yes.
okay.
Because it's not allowing me to share.
No, you just need to give him rights. Just go to Ezekiel's name, Hasmukh,
Okay.
and
Hold
write
on.
and give him co-host.
Yeah.
Doesn't disturb your streaming.
All right. All right. There you go. Assign co-host. There. Perfect. Thanks, Mercy.
Okay. It's
Yeah. Go ahead, Ezekiel. Should be right.
You see it?
Try not to share the entire video.
Hello? Hello?
Don't share the entire
Do you see
screen.
it?
We're seeing your entire
Hello?
screen.
Yeah.
Ezekiel,
Oh, sorry.
share the video alone.
Okay.
The entire screen.
Sawa. Okay.
Okay, voila. Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Good.
So that explains why Agile is important in digital transformation.
Absolutely. No. It's absolutely it is. Good. Anybody else wants to make a comment? Good. It's almost 8. Almost. Well, it's 8.
Ezekiel, please send the video to us. Hasmukh, please send me the video. I've seen the video before.
Yeah, I have as well.
And that video is so spot on. True.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's very relevant. Good, guys. Anything else? Ezekiel, anything else you want to add?
I think that's so much for the session from my side.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to do another session with you, as I mentioned earlier. I think there's a number of areas that I would like to touch on, but we've run out of time. So I'll reach out to you again soon. So we set up another session. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Good. All right. If there's nothing else from anybody else, we think we just wind down. And thank you very much for joining. I hope it was useful to everybody. And it has been, I think, should be on live stream, so people can also catch it there. Good.
Ezekiel, let's connect on LinkedIn. That's my connect LinkedIn connection, yeah? Or you connect with Hasmukh, yeah?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. And
the video, I need that video.
rest of the evening. Bye.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Bye.
I'll do.
Thank you.